In a future where a devastating drought has left the USA desolate, people are desperate enough to kill for water. Most have fled, but the Holm family remains, with Father Ernest clinging to the hope that plants will grow again if they can find water. He recalls the land's former greenery, though his son Jerome doesn't. One day, two thieves try to break into a shed on Ernest's farm by burning the lock. Ernest catches them, shoots one when he retaliates, and kills the other when he reaches for a gun after begging for mercy. Jerome watches from a distance, offering to help, but Ernest only asks him to call him Dad. Inside the shed is a pump, but it doesn't yield any water, leaving them to push their mule onward without a drink. The duo continues their journey and encounters the Watermen, a group that controls water distribution from deep wells through a government deal. Ernest trades supplies for water and warns Jerome not to anger these dangerous men, just trade and leave quickly. Ernest often tries to get water for their farm, but the watermen's prices are too high. On the way home, their mule falls and gets badly injured. Ernest shoots the mule to end its pain, leaving Jerome in tears, though he insists he could have done it. Back at the farm, Jerome's sister Mary serves them MREs, then scrubs the dishes with soil, while Ernest listens to the radio and Jerome sketches animals, their only hobbies. Suddenly, Ernest hears a noise and finds that Mary has sneaked out to meet her secret boyfriend. The next day, Jerome and Ernest go to an auction to bid on a robot mule, Simulate Shadow, Sim, to replace their mule. Sam's son, Flem, competes with them, but Ernest wins the auction, worsening his debt. They then visit the kid's mother, Katherine, in the hospital. She can't walk due to an accident and needs an expensive machine to help her walk again. After a nice afternoon with her, they head home. On the way, they see Robbie and Sooz with their baby, struggling to survive. Ernest, who initially ignores them, later returns with water and advises them not to sell their baby, promising to help with water. Back at the farm, Flem, who is Mary's secret boyfriend, shows up and asks to borrow Sim, but Ernest refuses unless Sam signs a guarantee. Offended, Flem leaves, saying Ernest will never irrigate his land. The next time Jerome and Ernest meet the Watermen, they make good time thanks to Sim, and Ernest tries to convince them to consider installing a water line on his farm. Later, Ernest begins digging out his old pump for the Watermen to inspect, telling Jerome he should get out and meet people, but Jerome prefers to stay and take care of his family. On their way home, they see Flem speed by in his car. At the farm, Mary is washing clothes using a vacuum cleaner. When Ernest arrives, he forbids her from going out anymore, which leads to an argument. Mary lashes out, saying she's old enough to do what she wants, and confesses she loves Flem and hates her father. She tries to run away, but bumps into Jerome and asks for money, giving Ernest time to catch up and stop her. Mary cries, accusing Ernest of failing the family, and in response, he locks her up and nails her window shut. Sometime later, Ernest and Jerome wake up to find that Sim has been stolen. Ernest suspects Flem and goes to his house, but Sam tells him that Flem left for the mountains that morning. It's revealed that Ernest's farm used to belong to Sam, and Flem is obsessed with reclaiming what his family lost, even though Sam believes the land is infertile and water won't help. Ernest then goes to the mountains to investigate, but is suddenly knocked out. He wakes up at the Watermen's camp in the evening, accused of stealing their supplies with Sim. Ernest denies it, but the leader, Caleb, attacks him. After a struggle, Ernest manages to grab Caleb's knife and a rifle, firing it into the air to keep everyone back. He escapes while Caleb yells threats after him. On his way home, Ernest finds Flem asleep by a fire with Sim nearby. Flem stole the machine and supplies to frame Ernest. Ernest waits until morning to wake Flem with a rifle pointed at his face, then ties him to Sim, who is carrying the stolen supplies. As they walk under the hot sun to find the Watermen, Flem taunts Ernest by talking about Mary. So Ernest yanks the rope to make him fall as punishment. Both become dangerously thirsty, and Flem convinces Ernest to stop for a drink. The supplies only contain alcohol, not water, and Ernest, struggling with addiction, soon gets drunk. Flem pretends to drink while claiming he stole the machine to survive because Caleb wants him dead. He offers Ernest money, but Ernest, suspicious, refuses. When Ernest tries to stand, the alcohol leaves him dizzy and weak. This was Flem's plan all along, and he uses the opportunity to hit Ernest with a rock, causing him to hit his head on a cliff. As Ernest bleeds and loses consciousness, he has a flashback to Katherine's car accident caused by his drinking. Later, Ernest wakes up tied to Sim as Flem, now crazed, pours more alcohol into his mouth, screaming wildly. Afterward, Flem goes to the farm, and Mary jumps on his bike to escape with him. Worried about Ernest, Jerome decides to search for his father. By nightfall, he finds Sim at the waterman's camp, where they tell him his dad died in an accident with a machine. At the funeral, Mary returns, and the siblings cry together. They then visit their mom to break the sad news. Flem picks them up in his truck and drives them home. Back at the farm, a grieving Jerome starts smashing Sim with a hammer, but Flem stops him, saying grief is tough, but they can't ruin their source of income. He offers to become the new head of the family to help them and shocks Jerome by revealing that Mary is pregnant. Flem has big plans for the farm, and Jerome agrees to let him try. In the afternoon, Flem brings supplies to the waterman and asks Caleb to install a water pipe on the farm. Initially, Caleb refuses, but when Flem blames him for Ernest's death, since Caleb's rifle and knife were found with the body, Caleb, fearing the consequences, agrees to divert water to the siblings' land. A few days later, the new farm pump is installed, and Flem works tirelessly to plant and grow wheat, watered by sprinklers. The family can now even enjoy real showers. Weeks later, Jerome is amazed to see a small leaf on the ground, and soon the land is covered in lush plants. To celebrate, Flem and Mary get married and tattoo each other's initials on their hands. During the party, Flem drinks and dwells on Ernest's death. A few days later, Sam arrives at the farm with 2 bank representatives, revealing that Ernest's debt is enormous, and they expect Flem to pay it. Flem, trying to look tough, scares the horses with his bike, but Sam explains that no one wanted the land, and Ernest had it only because he never left. With the water and crops, the bank can now sell the land, so Flem must pay to keep it. That night, Flem loads Sim onto his truck and picks up Robbie and his baby, pretending they're just checking prices. However, Flem secretly sells the baby against Robbie's will. When Robbie demands his baby back, the buyers open fire, killing him. They also shoot at Flem, who returns fire and escapes, leaving Sim behind. In the crossfire, Sim is damaged and activates a mode that guides it back to the original factory. The next day, Flem uses the money from selling the baby to pay the bank, but tells the siblings he sold Sim to Robbie. Meanwhile, Sim makes it to the city and is found by its builder, Calvin, who contacts the farm. Jerome answers the call and becomes suspicious, so he heads to the local market. There he sees Flem talking to Sooz, who is holding a doll, pretending it's her baby. When Jerome tries to approach them, Flem quickly leads Sooz away. Back at the farm, Jerome questions Flem about Robbie, but Flem lies, saying Robbie took Sim and abandoned his family. Determined to find the truth, Jerome says he's visiting his mother, but instead takes a bus to the border. The guards, however, won't let him cross because he's a minor without a guardian. Just then, Anna approaches and offers to help him cross for a fee. Jerome agrees, and she hides him in a truck full of chickens. After a few hours, they reach the city, which Jerome sees for the first time. Anna takes him to the factory, but only takes half the payment, explaining the return trip is a scam. He won't need a guide to leave since no one will stop him. Before she leaves, Jerome asks if she knew someone named Ernest, but Anna doesn't recognize the name. Jerome meets with Calvin, who shows him Sim's functions. Sim's eyes are cameras designed to capture the landscape for reforestation, recording everything it sees. Calvin teaches Jerome how to use the footage and then gives him privacy. Jerome is emotional when he sees his dad again, but is horrified to discover that Flem killed Ernest. Flem had tied Ernest to Sim and sent it toward the waterman's camp, making it appear as though Sim accidentally dragged Ernest to his death. Jerome breaks down in the office. That evening, it rains on the farm for the first time in over a decade. When Jerome returns, he calmly asks Flem how he got Sim back. Flem, confused, checks the barn and is shocked to see Sim undamaged, concluding that Robbie must have returned it out of guilt. A few days later, Jerome visits his mother, Katherine, and promises to take care of her, like Ernest did. One afternoon, while hunting with Flem to protect the crops, Flem misses all his shots and hands the rifle to Jerome, blaming the gun. Jerome is tempted to shoot Flem, but instead kills a deer, proving Flem's poor aim. Later, Jerome hides the rifle in his room. During lunch, Jerome casually mentions that Robbie called, looking for Flem. This unnerves Flem, who snaps and accuses Jerome of lying. Mary scolds Flem for his attitude, and Jerome insists he's telling the truth, causing Flem to storm out. The next day, Flem receives a letter from Jerome pretending to be Robbie, asking him to meet at the cliffs because he's in trouble. Before leaving, Flem looks for the rifle, but Jerome tells him he took it to the shop for repairs since Flem said it wasn't working well. Flem, not wanting to raise suspicion, plays along and apologizes for his outburst at dinner. He grabs a knife and heads to the cliffs with Sim, calling out for Robbie. Suddenly, he falls into a hidden pit and breaks his legs. Flem screams in pain and begs Sim for help, but the machine doesn't understand. At that moment, Jerome appears, silently holding a rock, revealing that he knows the truth. Desperate, Flem begs for mercy, but Jerome only watches, letting him suffer under the scorching sun. Flem eventually pleads again, reminding Jerome to think of Mary and the baby, giving a speech about accidents and regret. Jerome, enraged, finally shoots Flem, killing him. When Jerome returns home, he lets Mary believe that Flem abandoned her and doesn't reveal how Ernest really died. With the money from the crops, they can now afford real food, and the siblings agree to buy the machine so Katherine can live with them. Jerome erases all the footage from Sim, ready to start over. If you enjoyed this video, don't be shy to hit the like button, and if you disliked it, hit the dislike button twice, just to be sure. It would be best if you watched the whole movie. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe for more videos like this.